what I heard.
They're looking at maybe making a first pour end of this week.
Okay, we're rolling. Thank you.
We're live?
Yep, that's correct.
Okay. All right, good evening. I'd like to call to order the Town of Rocky Hill Public Building Commission meeting of Monday, June 8th at 5:32 p.m. First item on the agenda is approval of our draft minutes from our April 30th and May 11th meetings. April 30th being our special meeting and May 11th is our last regular meeting. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
A motion by Sal. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Steve. Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Hearing none. John, do I need a roll call for this or just look for any, for all motions?
Yeah, probably.
Might as well.
Sure.
Okay. All right, I'll call your name and give me a yay or nay on the motion. Mr. Gansey,
Yay.
Mr. Bodwin,
Yay.
Mr. Bates,
Yay.
Mr. Longo,
Yay.
and Mr. O'Connor.
Yay.
All right. And Todd will be joining us hopefully soon. All right, now next item, public comment. I believe we don't have anybody from the public that requested to put in, so we'll move in to the next topic, which is, well, our only topic is the community center. Community/senior center discussion updates from Colliers. Matt, go ahead.
Good evening, all. Quick update. PAC has gotten moving on things. Got some good progress starting off. We had a kickoff meeting with the building official and fire marshal as well as some other staff last week. The building permit was issued on May 28th, so that's in hand. That's great. And as some of you may have heard John say a little bit earlier, PAC had Call Before You Dig out there today. They were also starting to get themselves set up with a temporary office location inside the areas that they'll have access to for the duration of the project. Also, fencing will start to get set up. You'll see some of that work starting tomorrow and Wednesday, although they are going to be, looking out and cognizant of the fact that there's a march going on. So they'll just keep an eye out for that and stay clear. And obviously those fencing locations during that kickoff meeting was coordinated with various different town departments. So everyone was on board. I think everything should be set up pretty well so that populations are able to stay separated from one another and adequate space for both town departments as well as PAC, which is good. And at the moment, they don't plan to use the laydown space to the north of the library. That's kind of a should we need it space. So that's nice to have that remain untouched. I think that's kind of a general update as to where things are. We're still moving forward on working through the contract. Getting that executed. I think we're going to touch upon a couple of the specific 2 items tonight, just to make sure we get some direction out of the committee and we can get that executed and finalized. The first one be contractor markup percentage. We've had a bit of back and forth here, but the most recent offer, I'll say, or revision from PAC on that would be a aggregate or combined total markup percentage on change orders of 18.5%. And, that would be inclusive of all subcontractor markups, superintendent time, EGCs associated with it, as well as PAC. I think Brian had distributed some language from the contract, so you guys could take a chance to review it. They have also requested that we strike point from that language. I'm not sure if you have it in front of you, but essentially point 2 is, I'll read it as in the contract currently. It says, for the contractor, for work performed by the contractor's subcontractor, 5% of the amount due to that subcontractor. Essentially, they'd like to scratch that, so the aggregate that's defining everything is the combined total of 18.5%. Ultimately, the difference in markup between a subcontractor and the GC would be jurisdicted by the contract separately between PAC and whatever subcontractor that is, but ultimately nothing beyond 18.5% would be shown in a change order.
Yeah, Matt, if you could you illustrate an example of that? Because first off, I'm having a hard time hearing you. You're breaking up.
Oh, am I? Sorry.
That's all right. And then secondly, I wasn't clear on what you were saying about the 5% they want to strike. More specific. Forget about what the contract says specifically, but
So essentially the 5% was a limitation on what PAC themselves could get out of a change order. So if we were using the 18.5% that they were offering, then that would be limiting PAC's percentage to 5% of the 18.5% total.
only if you're asking us if we could strike that only if they perform the work with their own people?
No, that has a different line, and that would be limited to 10%. But I've also been advised by PAC that they don't plan on self-performing anything. So the 5% would be, for example, there's a $10,000 change order. The direct costs, labor and material costs from that subcontractor was the $10,000. This would essentially allow the subcontractor to make their markup, and then PAC would be able to apply a 5% to that direct cost. So if it was, either way, if it's 18.5%, that $10,000 change order adds 18.5% to $10,000.
Yeah, I'm looking at the explanation. So they're asking us to change that 5% to 8.5%?
Essentially, as long as their subcontractor contracts are at 10%. What they would like to do is just strike that, so we're not limiting their percentage. We're just limiting the aggregate 18.5, which is really all that impacts the project. It wouldn't really change what the project would see on the total change order number. It's the 18.5 that's really going to be driving that.
Sal, do you mind? I'm going to jump in here for a second. Todd joined us, just to let you know. And so, it would be nice, Matt, if we could see the subcontract language that they have in their subcontracts. Because I feel like if we're going with an aggregate maximum, it opens them up to really squeezing their subcontractors as much as possible. Where there's no language between us and PAC that doesn't allow that. So what's holding them from really squeezing their subs and allowing their subs to get 8% and 4%, because it's more money in their pocket because they're looking at an 18% maximum. So
that's certainly could be the
there's
case.
so many, there's so many different ways to look at this. That's the problem, and this is the problem that we're going to have. That we are having because we didn't have anything written into our general conditions during the bid. So you saw
standard language is there's a markup for the GC, for the subcontractor. standard AIA language. Markup for the sub and a percentage, traditionally 5% for the overall, not to exceed 15, with a sliding scale. So if it's a very small amount, 0 to 5,000, maybe the overall markup is a maximum of 20%, and then 15, and then 10, depending on the range we pick. So again, I think we need to get them a little more specific. They keep asking for more and more each time we talk to them, it seems like. And every time you go back to the drawing table with these guys.
I mean, ultimately, we have a contract directly with them. We don't have control over their contracts with their subcontractors.
And I understand that. And they should have some responsibility, but it's how we're getting off on the whole. We're getting off to the wrong foot with these guys, and we're only in the honeymoon stage. There's a few things we didn't much care for, and we can discuss it now or later. I don't care, but we could touch on the real thing that stuck was the subcontractor issue, and then the change order issue. And we were very clear the first and only time we all met together with them in the PBC meetings, where we were clear to say, we're looking not to exceed 15%. They all seemed to nod their head without saying anything. And then they moved on to the approval with the subcontractors that were listed. And now we're hearing other conversation that's going on that, quite frankly, there was a reason for requesting a list of subs. So we have some control over the quality of the product. We can't worry about them and their bottom line. And yeah, we do have some flexibility there, Matt. I think we need to discuss this further, but I don't know how the rest feel. I mean, Steve, you're dealing on this a lot, Steve Longo. You're always involved in a lot of these change order issues. The 18.5%, the way it was explained, I didn't have that much of an issue. I'm looking at the email that was sent. I mean, I do have an issue with it, but I'm willing to forego that. But it was the way it was spelled out to us, even in this email: 10% to the subs, 8.5% overall to the GC. Now they're asking us to strike more. And like Brian said, I mean, maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe we have a legal recourse. Maybe we don't. Steve, would you chime in on this one? Because you have a lot more direct on a lot of these items.
Well, in our general conditions, it's pretty clear and cut. You know, it's black and white. We have that sliding scale for change orders. As far as 0 to 5 is 20%, and then anything over 25,000, it's actually 12%. And then there's only a 6% markup for the contractor if it's not his own forces, and it builds up from there. So, I mean, for us, it's in the contract. It's in the general conditions. It's pretty clear. There's no negotiating it. It is what it is.
Mm-hmm. So what's your opinion of this whole thing, though, in general? I mean, considering we didn't spell it out in the general conditions up front.
I mean, I kind of agree. It seems like they're playing some kind of game with, you know, striking the 5% and giving it an 8%. But like you said, we don't have really control over it. It's a GC contract, and we kind of knew what we were getting into.
So where do we go, Matt?
I mean, to be honest, my recommendation is to move forward with the 18%. I think, you know, when we're talking about the overall scale of things, if you just use a reference point, by no means should there be, or should we anticipate, you know, $400,000 worth of change orders. But if we use that as a calculation point, the difference between even 15% and 20% on $400,000 worth of change orders is $20,000. So when we're looking at 15% and overall 18.5%, which is the impact to the project, we're talking about less than $20,000 over the life of the project. I would recommend at this point moving forward with this language. If you want to push back and leave that 0.2 in there and swap the 5% to 8.5, I don't think that they have really much, grounds to argue too much with that. So I think that that could be a reasonable place to go back with. That's kind of where I had put that email together, but that's kind of my recommendation coming out of this piece of it.
It's not even the 18 and a half versus 20 versus 15. It's been the taste left in my mouth since the beginning of this whole thing started.
I can understand that.
I don't know anybody else if they want to chime in on this one, or do we want to put it to a vote? Brian, how do you want to go with this?
I mean, I did have a discussion with Paul from PAC this afternoon, and he said he was going to think about it, and I think he had a discussion with Matt as well afterwards. And I think I'd really like to push for the 10 and 5, and then an aggregate of 18. It really comes into play when it comes to second and third tier subcontractors. If there's just one subcontractor, they should just get the 5% on whatever their subcontract cost is. I think that's pretty clear. I feel like if we're giving them an extra 3% on some certain change orders that may benefit them, if we just keep it a straight line of 5% markup on all subcontract cost and go from there. So, if we're going to allow a little flexibility with especially with the subcontractor issue, I think they need to be a little flexible with us.
Well, I'm not going to concede the subcontractor issue yet.
Right.
Until we have the discussion. But I think when this was presented, I think we looked at it as an aggregate of 18.5%. That would be the maximum under the circumstance that was just presented, where you had the sub and there was the GC. Then that maximum would be 15%, 10 and 5, which historically, and we're not always the prime, but most of the albeit I see a lot of contracts which are included in our inside the bid packages or inside the spec book, and most of the time it's a maximum of 15. So I would hold firm to what you were saying, Brian, with the 15, with the aggregate of 18.5% under those instances that it presents itself.
And I can certainly go back with that. It was a topic of conversation when I did talk with Paul earlier today. That was after Brian. I know Brian had expressed, what he just did during that call prior to me talking with Paul. It didn't seem, and I'm just the messenger here in this case, but it didn't seem as though they were feeling as though that was fair distribution, I guess is what we said.
They didn't feel it was fair distribution?
Yeah, the 5%, they were essentially, the reason that they were pushing.
Okay, well, to that end, fair distribution isn't listing 3 subs and not using one of them on a trade. And you have to clue me in, because I thought it was more than 4, but we know it's definitively more than 4. But you got 12 subs that were listed and not one of the 12 were selected. So that's an issue.
Well, especially knowing what we know of one of the subs, and I'm not going to start naming them names or even put it in the category itself, but there's at least one subcontractor that is pretty clearly nowhere near up to the standards that we would have expected, and can expect problems. Nor should we ask the engineer to step in and step that up in further inspections without additional fees to us. And why should we eat that cost? Because we have concerns, legitimate concerns. So Tom's right, but it drives the nail all the way in when we know about one of those subcontractors as being a very subpar subcontractor in his particular trade. And one that's an important part of this project, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, we get into kind of a sticky area with that because our contract documents and our language in the contract documents did not say anything about how we qualify subcontractors. Yes, I understand that, I think that the town did voice their opinion on one of the site contractors. We do not have the right to tell them who is qualified in anyone's opinion without some kind of a gauge of those we didn't ask for subcontractor qualifications. I think we get ourselves into a sticky area by saying, yeah, I heard this guy's bad. This guy, yeah, he's no good. Well, what are the parameters for those judgments? And I think we're just getting ourselves into a sticky situation because, quite honestly, they've probably got their lawyers ready to write up something as soon as anything goes down. So that's just my
And
opinion.
that's fine. And that shouldn't scare us. That should have no bearing on this at all. We know that the spirit of the bid proposal form was to give us an indication as to who they were going to use. Let's not forget the spirit of it, which would hold up in most court cases, or at least in a battle of letters between lawyers. And not that we want to go down that road. I don't know anything about the site contractor. I will say that the concrete contractor and the steel contractor both have excellent reputations. I personally have worked with both of them at one time or another, and they lived up to their reputation. But there's a few people on this panel that know firsthand how poor one of those major trades is, and it's still our building. And the contract's not signed yet. So there's absolutely nothing stopping us from moving on if we really had to. Nothing at all. We couldn't come to terms in the contract. This wouldn't be the first and it wouldn't be the last. But they want us to give in, and they keep asking for more and more each step of this process. But they're not giving in either. And Tom's right. I mean, it wasn't like one or two subcontractors here. It was not one of the 12. Not one of them. Is that right, Tom?
At least on four, at least from what I understand, there's at least 4 trade classifications where 3 named subs were listed and not one of the, and in those 4 categories, not one of the 3 were selected or given a contract. At least that's what I got from the last meeting that Collier's presented. I thought there were more than that, but I definitively it was 4.
I mean, I don't want to have our feet held to the fire over something like this. And not only that, they knew what the spirit of this was. And they also know, and I'll bet you if you go back to the meeting where we recommended them to go to town council with the letter of intent, you'll also see where I think we associated it and tied it to some of their subcontract listings that they had.
Correct.
There's also that. So you got to go back to those meeting minutes.
Go
as
and
well.
check the minutes.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's, as Sal said, I think it's.
Yeah, I mean, again. Yeah, so, I mean, just to be clear, yeah, it's four of the 6 named subtrades. So basically, site contractor, plumbing subcontractor, HVAC subcontractor, and the electrical subcontractor. They entered into subcontracts with a firm that is not one of the 3 that is listed. They did subcontract with Steel Tech for steel, and I believe was it Hartford Fire for the sprinkler systems they did subcontract with. So those are the trades, and yes, they did list 3 contractors, and each of those that we did review, which I believe was reviewed during their scope review as well as during our special meeting on the 30th to move forward. So. But was our decision, yeah, we did want to have input on the subcontractors that were listed. So for them to go ahead and make substitutions after the fact is what has left a bad taste in a lot of our mouths. And, subsequent to that, PAC has offered, out of good faith, a $10,000 credit to the town for that substitution. So just so that you guys all know.
To me, it's not about the money. This is a 7,500-year-old building, 50 anyway. Quality is going to be far more important than $10,000. Just my opinion.
Anybody else from the panel from our commission have any comments regarding subcontractors
Yeah, I mean,
or change orders?
well, I'll start with the subcontractor. I think we really don't have a leg to stand on. If we needed to qualify them, the subs, we should have had that language within our specifications. We didn't. So I think you are kind of left with whatever they bring to the table. That being said, quality and risk to the town is an issue. I'm sure there's language, I have not read it, but I'm sure there's language in there that does protect the town in terms of quality and extra work that has to be done by an engineer or a third-party reviewer. So I think, you kind of have to let PAC do their job, and if you have to monitor them closely, then that's what you have to do. On the 18.5%, I think it is high, but as Matt said, we're spending right now more money talking about it than what they'd ever make doing it, and that's assuming that they used up 400,000 or 500,000 in change orders, right? That's the difference. It's $18,000.
And again, putting it in that perspective, okay, but again, I'm more concerned with what's going to come out of the quality. And I don't know that we don't have a leg to stand on as far as their subcontractors are concerned. I think the meeting of the minutes, and I think there's no reason why we can't push back on that a little harder.
Well, I think you can push back, but I don't think you can disqualify them based on not choosing any of the subs that they submitted, right? I mean, there could be several reasons they didn't choose the subs that they have right now.
Well, I'd like a little further, conversation about it, or a discussion with somebody who has certainly the knowledge of how far we could push that more than any one of us, of some lawyer or somebody that can discuss it further who's been in this situation. It's a major trade, and again, the $10,000 is going to go away pretty quick because we're going to have somebody monitoring them that much closer. You're going to eat up that money in inspections, a lot of inspections, just to keep them on board. And if you're going to inspect them, if there's any concern of the other trades, maybe we need further inspections there.
Well, then I think some letter needs to be written on specific subcontractors saying, hey, we've had this experience, XYZ, here you go, and have that in some form of written content up front. That way, if it does come back, you can say, here, we shared these concerns, and this is what is happening. I've been on a lot of public projects where I know the subcontractor going in is not the right guy for it. I mean, we've even had them on Rocky Hill projects, and we know who they are, but we still gave it to them, right? We had no choice.
In the construction management piece of that, I would agree, but correct me if I'm wrong, Steve, in this, I don't know if we can even compare it because it's a state versus town. Steve, when you have a pre-qualified, or not pre-qualified, excuse me, if you have a general contractor who has to spell out one or three subcontractors, if the general contractor under a general contract bid doesn't provide one of those three subs as a contracted subcontractor of the job, can they do that? Or did they get disqualified for that?
It's an incomplete bid if they don't fill it out like they're supposed to. So if they don't put that name subcontractor, then it's an incomplete bid and it gets thrown out.
So, okay, so they have to provide.
Right.
Okay.
It's
Now,
required
there's
by
a difference
state law.
between the pre-qualified and the named, obviously, that the pre-qualified has to be certified through DAS, which, it's basically
It's easy.
giving your information,
Yeah.
to DAS and going through the process and paying the fee, and you're good to go. But
No, and I used the wrong choice of words, pre-qualified. I meant named subcontractor. So again, I don't know.
and
How far do you
even
wanna-
with all that, we're still in the same situation where, we still get the low bidders and the not so great contractors, and we lose a lot of money.
Hmm.
And that's probably why our contingency is so high.
Yeah, so basically, I had a bad experience with one of the name subs not one of the name subs, but one of the contractors they subcontracted with, not one of the name subs, and that was a small project. So, to say that is representative of who they are, I don't know how correct that would be. I mean, we all have bad projects. Sal, there's probably people out there that would probably never use you again, but
That's
it's hard to say. We all have our bad jobs, and I had that bad job with this contractor. And, quite honestly, when it comes down to it, it's PAC's bond that's up in the books here. And I don't think they would subcontract with somebody that would put them at risk. I think they're smarter than that. But again, that's why we have paperwork in place and protection measures. And, as far as our quality control plan, do we have to keep an extra eye out? I mean, who's our daily eyes and ears on this job? The architect signing off on things. Colliers will be overseeing. I mean, there's stuff in place for, inspecting and quality control. So I'm hoping that that's in place. And, again, we get a $8.3 million project in 12 months, and it's up to PAC to make sure that happens. And we have provisions in place, I believe. It's
Yeah, but
it's
you said
unfortunate.
something. Yeah, but Brian, you said something that concerns me, because it seems like we keep doing this repeatedly on major issues. We don't put enough in writing. We don't qualify out issues. We hope that they're going to perform. We hope the sub's going to do this. We hope the inspections are going to be in place. We have to make sure that, knowing what we already know, then the inspections have to be in place. We need to have those safety measures put in place and in writing, and we have to guarantee it, or our hired consultants have to put that in place to reassure us. So with that said, before we move on to Rocco with the same question, I guess, John, what's your opinion from the town? And I'm curious what John's thoughts are. Your mic's off, John.
Again, we have this project that it's very visible, and we're moving it along pretty quickly through the GC process, and I'm not sure in the trade whether it's that important in a government project that lists the subs and they have to be on it. So I'm sort of leaning towards David's comment with not a leg to stand on, and we're talking about bringing the fencing in and starting the the construction and all that, and then sort of following Brian's thing where maybe you have a contractor that has a bad project and so on, but we do have, the architect Collier's on board looking at it and so on. So I'm the one that wants to move this project along and not delay it any longer, and then try to not spend as much money on attorney's fees as possible. So I'm not in the construction phase. I'm more in the payment and trying to get this thing done so that everybody's happy a year from now.
Rocco, what do you have contractually with your consultants, the engineer, mechanical, electrical, et cetera, structural? What are they required to do? How many visits? Are we going to get into an issue to minimize those costs and yet still keep a close eye on them? And Matt, the same question will be posed to you after Rocco answers, please.
I'm not sure exactly what they're contractually obligated to do. What I do know about RZ, so we have MEP and structural right across the street from the project. So they have, I guess you could say they have kind of a vested interest in how this project goes. I do not, I'm not aware of which contractor everybody has an issue with. So yeah, I'd have to review to see what they're contractually obligated to do. Most of the time it's, a few visits during construction, and then, the final closeout ones. And we're responsible for being there all the time. We have a pretty good relationship with them, and I'm sure if there was an issue and we called them, they don't have to spend a whole lot of time to come review this project and see what somebody's doing. They just look out the window, walk across the street.
Matt?
So from a Collier standpoint, we have, Collier has also a construction rep. So obviously I'll be there at times, but also we have a construction rep that comes on and is part of our team during construction. His name is Mark Greenfield in this case. And he's been engaged for the last few weeks as part of this kickoff process with PAC. As well as, our OAC meetings, a couple of that we've had, and helping coordinate things on site. He will be there 2 to 3 times a week, potentially a little bit more frequently if the length and time that he's there is less in 1 week, in each visit. But he'll be there at least 2, if not 3 times a week for 2 to 3 hours each session. And he'll be generating field reports for each site visit, reporting who's on site, how many, what the workforce is for the various subcontractors, identify any issues, taking pictures, keeping in close contact with PAC and site superintendent to identify issues. So we will certainly have people on site frequently.
So this letter we're speaking of, who should be writing that letter? Matt, as far as getting their attention to all of these issues, concerns, following David's lead as to how that letter gets put together, and then be nice to see a quick draft, at least through the change order subcommittee anyway, and then or through Brian, and we all get a quick look at it before it goes out the door to make certain that they're going to follow this, and they're going to need to know that we're going to be monitoring this very, very closely.
I can
John, what he wants without us having to be, my bigger concern is what you don't see: underground utilities that aren't aren't installed correctly, not following specification, et cetera, et cetera. Letting them off the hook because you couldn't find it or something to that effect. Because it's buried.
Who's our civil engineer on the project?
DTC.
Oh,
DTC.
oh. So I guess one of the points Al pointed out was, listen, obviously the town's going to be inspecting this also. My biggest thing is following the spec, because the town could come in and inspect it. The town could come in and inspect it, and it could be in accordance to code, but it may not be in accordance with the specifications. And I think, and the only person that's going to know that is going to be the engineer and or possibly Collier's, depending on how much research you look at that in particular, you take and you review that in particular spec to make sure that they are conforming. My frustration here is, and listen, I'm not looking to hogtie PAC Group in regards to their selection, but for me, it was more of a sign of, good faith and transparency. And it just, something smelled in Denmark when you end up having four major trade sections, and you listed 3 for each of those sections, and you ended up not using one of them. Then you know what? You were probably just better off putting TBD on the bid form, to be determined. I mean, would that have gotten them thrown out if it wasn't mandatory? Then we probably shouldn't have even put it there. I mean, we as a committee discussed this at length to figure out, so that we could vet who these subs were. And in some cases, it was, there was thoughts given to them, for award. And if we're not going to follow that, if there was no weight that's going to be given to this, then, we probably just shouldn't have done it.
Well, the language in the document should have been stronger. That's simple. It should have been more like a state type language. But too late. Now we need to bootstrap this before it goes too far, or at least let them be clear that we're going to be watching and monitoring this very closely. We do already have concerns.
If you don't mind me asking, what trades are we talking about here, just so we can
A
understand?
couple of
the risk?
mechanicals. Mechanical,
So it's
electrical.
it could be a big number then.
It could be a big issue, and it could be a
Okay.
big, yeah, I mean, look, I'm with Tom in the sense that I'm not trying to hog tie anyone either, but when you're going into something and like he said, the transparency was supposed to be there, they agreed to it. The letter of intent recommendation was based on all that. But we also have to be considerate to the town, because John wants this to move forward. We want to keep this moving forward, but we keep giving in. We're giving into the change order issue. We had long discussions of that with them. And we're giving into just saying, well, we put in language to that, and we knew the spirit of this whole thing was supposed to be give us quality people and at least have a discussion with us. It didn't matter to them. They just did what they wanted to do, buy it out, bottom line. And you know what you get with bottom line. And if we have something that we can save or correct now, and if legally we can't change the subs they selected, then we need to find a way to make sure that we stick to them, that this thing needs to be monitored very, very closely with the major trades.
I think we can certainly draft a letter with some concerns. Maybe be helpful to get a little bit more information once I put together a start to a draft as to some specific concerns, and we can make sure to include that and issue that to PAC as a memorandum, so that they're advised ahead of time. Obviously, in writing, I'm sure they're pretty cognizant given the back and forth conversations that have occurred. But we can certainly draft up a letter to give to them, and I can also reassure you, at least from the Collier side, that we'll be paying attention for sure, to specific concerns, of course, throughout construction.
Right.
And they need to be conforming to what was specified, and if they're not, then that's an issue.
Mm-hmm. Well, they have to correct it. It's no issue
Absolutely.
on our part. They tear it apart and rebuild it the right way. There's no issue.
I meant that's an issue for them.
Yes, exactly. And I think, the words like concern, and so these aren't, they're concerns, but a little stronger language where we can needs to be made clear to them. This is going to be monitored. We're going to expect what we bought.
Absolutely.
And then somebody has to be either the owner's rep, well, not only the owner's rep, the architect and all his consultants need to make certain, knowing our concerns as a building committee, we're telling you up front, we have concerns as a committee, knowing some of the players, and they need to be closely watched to make sure they comply. So we need assurance also from Collier's and Quisenberry as well. So that this is going to be followed through for us. I mean,
Absolutely. If I didn't just make, if I didn't make that clear, then I intended to.
Yeah, no, I know you will, but we, you know, a little something in writing that is shared with the committee as CC'd on it would be helpful. Because the last thing we want, and I hate to keep bringing it up, but we're paying an awful lot of money to make some corrections on a school that opened up just a couple of years ago. And we just don't want to be there. If we could see the writing on the wall up front, let's just be sure, that's all. Now, that said, is there anything else? Can we discuss one more item and skip on to the next one? Is that all right, Brian?
This is in regard, are we still on, this is beyond change order percentage and subcontractors?
Yes.
Does it fall in line with Collier's, does Collier's need to respond?
No.
You want to save that for new business or?
Sure.
I mean, it doesn't matter to me if you.
It's Quisenberry.
Right now,
Well,
but-
it refers to Quisenberry.
Okay.
Rocco,
Well, go ahead.
I'm sorry, did you want to vote on something first before we move on?
No, I mean, I just want to see if Collier, if Matt, are you all set on your end with those topics?
I mean,
Or, well, actually, no, you do have a couple of other things that you want to talk about, I believe, right? Can you wait, Sal, till the next lightning round?
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
Okay. We'll let Matt finish up here.
I do, yeah. And I just want to make sure that I'm clear as to what the directive is from the committee on the two items. So we're moving for, or at least on the markup, we're moving forward with that. I'm pushing back on the 5% or 8.5%.
No, I believe it was as you had it drafted, which is 10% on self-performed, 5% markup on subcontracted work, and an aggregate maximum of 18.5%.
Okay, I can certainly
Unless anybody else disagrees.
Okay, I will move forward with that. And I understand the concern and the next steps for the subcontractors. So we'll certainly put together language and distribute that. The other items are, one of them is the revised alternate 2 pricing. So once contracted, PAC would be providing issuing a $26,950 credit for if that was included in alternate 2 that was intended for the base bid. So that would come through for the committee to review once the contract is executed.
Refresh our memory. What was alternate 2, Matt? I forgot.
Alternate 2 is the police parking lot one.
Thank you.
Yep. VE item number 1 is the lighting package, and just an update on that. I'll ask Rocco to jump in here, but my understanding is that he has been in communication with Illuminate, the vendor or distributor, who has provided additional direction on another light fixture that could potentially increase savings from the originally quoted $13,000 credit. And Rocco, I think that occurred today. Is that correct?
Yeah, I had a discussion with him today. Initially, last week, he had brought up to me that there may be some significant savings in some of the pendants with another manufacturer that he knew, with a very similar look, but considerably less expensive. When somebody else went ahead and put the package together and sent it off to the electrical contractor, before he saw it. And I called him back just before this meeting. And apparently there isn't a whole lot of savings in it because they're from Canada. So by the time you get the savings in the fixture, you eat it all up in the freight. So it's still more or less a continuing conversation with him to try and find some more items. We want to get that.
You're dealing with over at Illuminate.
Adam Reddick.
So where are we on that right now? I mean, what's the VE value?
$13,000 credit.
I'm sorry?
13,000 credit.
$13,000 net credit?
Correct.
I would say move as specified.
I agree. The old adage, you get what you pay for. I'm just picturing chintzy fixtures that fall apart, and for 13,000, which we know is probably not the right value anyways. I think we go as specified. Any other thoughts from committee members?
Is Adam giving you a number, Rocco? That's on par with that or no?
Yeah. Yeah. I get the ballpark. So.
Adam's a pretty straight up guy. I mean, if he's saying that's the number, then he's pretty darn close.
So I'll advise them not
So,
to.
Mr. Solmi, do you want to chime in from the facility standpoint on fixtures at all, or?
That's really Phil Sear, is the facilities director. So I'm not sure if he took a look at the specs.
Okay. I mean, Tom, our resident electrical expert. Todd, how about you? You're in the field.
Without knowing more details, I think what they said, go ahead with the spec, probably be the best idea.
Okay. Does anybody object with moving forward with not accepting that VE line item? Okay. Next one, Matt.
The second one is the VE item number 2, eliminate metal panels and rain screen system or ABB and repoint brick instead. I've pushed PAC on this to confirm all their scope and speak with Rocco to make sure that scope is correct, as it seems low, significantly low, but the credit is their credit is $18,250 based upon repointing allowance of 50% of the area.
I reviewed the ad portion of that for the masonry, repointing, cleaning, et cetera, and that was in line. I don't know enough about the metal panels or rain screen system, the values of those. So I would have no idea if that was high or low on the value of that portion of it.
Yeah, I think the intent when we went to look at these VE options was to look for some big chunks of change that could possibly easily be taken out of the project, and doesn't sound like we're going to come to an agreement on this dollar value. I think it's very light, and we're just giving PAC yet another opportunity to make up any differences from the bid. And like I stated in my email, we didn't get any credit back on the couple hundred feet of roof coping flashing work. So I know it's an incomplete number, and we're going to just play games for weeks going back and forth, and they need to get moving on this project. So I'm all for moving forward as specified.
Before we move forward on that, I just have a general question about these things. When they come back with something that's significantly lower than what is that we all know is in the market, and we don't fully, we know that you're not going to get the 15% overhead and profit back. We understand that. We get it. But if a credit should be $15 a square foot and they're giving you $7.50, there's a big difference between that and the 15% less. What recourse do we have to force that issue a little bit if we know they're not even in the ballpark?
We've used our estimating numbers to try and push back on, and that's kind of what we have at the moment.
So if they hold fast and say, yeah, I don't care what your estimator says, the price is this, and we know it's significantly low, whatever that item is, that's it, it's over. Shaking your head, yes, David.
It's a credit. I mean, it's not like it's we're giving them a CCD to move forward on T&M for whatever it costs. Again, this is something that's, I think, beyond our control, and clearly, I don't think it's a fair number, but I don't think we're going to come to any kind of agreement. Any other committee members' thoughts on this? Because I had originally, I think, in our through all our design committee meetings, this was always a couple $100,000 line item as far as the exterior cladding system. And we even value engineered that down from probably 400,000 plus down to 200 and something thousand. So to end up with $18,000 and 50% repointing on an existing building, I don't think is fair. So. And maybe they were carrying a bum number out there they have bid, but it is what it is, and that's my opinion. Anyone else? Jason, Steve, David, Todd?
I think you keep it. I think you keep it and move on.
Steve, your
I agree.
thoughts? Todd, you? Jay?
No, go ahead and move forward.
Steve, you guys have that nice new cladding system up at the state office building. Have you seen it in the interior courtyard?
The Capitol Lab there,
Yeah.
the bank.
Yeah.
No, I haven't been inside the building yet. I haven't got the tour.
Well, I know they have a cladding system on the inside of the courtyard, but you know, I think for what the look that we're going for on this project, I think we stay as designed. But again, we'll take any comments or thoughts from any other members. Tom, did you have any issues?
No.
Do we need to put this to a vote, Brian?
No, I think the VE was more of a discussion. I don't think it needs to be anything voted on. If you
can let it die.
I don't think there were no, those were really the only two VE items, correct?
Correct. Yep. Yeah, basically, I don't think there needs to be any formal direction. I'll just advise them not to continue to pursue and put together.
Yeah, if we were going to accept any of the VE items, then I think a motion would be made. So unless somebody wants to make a motion to accept either of the VE, then we move on. Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else first, Matt? Okay, on to Rocco with QA&M Architects. What do you got on your end?
Well, I'm finishing up the final, basically, permit set for the town. I should have an electronic version of that available tomorrow, and it'll be out to print, and then the town will have their 3 copies. As Matt said, we've gone through 2 OAC meetings, kind of walked around the site, walked around the building. It seems the PAC has got a pretty good handle on what they need to do. Then going forward, the FF&E package has been begun by the office. We're probably pretty close to 85% done as far as the furniture and the other finishes. They'll be available. We plan on putting together a meeting with the design committee probably about the 2nd week of July. Matt tells me that The bid for that package is probably around October or so. You can correct me if I remember that wrong. And then we also have to engage the town with some of the other FF&E stuff, the head end equipment, computers, screens, that type of thing moving forward.
Sal, you said you had some concerns or questions, discussion for
Questions?
Rocco?
Yeah, I did. Back during the bid process, when I was taking off the project and then sharing my thoughts and some information both with you and Brian, and then Brian compiled a general list of things that we were looking forward to getting corrected for the working set of drawings or permit set. Have all of those, including any RFIs, been incorporated into these drawings? Have the elevation, for example, I'm just saying interior elevations, we're on page 10 and you had to work your way back. The standard is to show an arrow pointing to a key that brings you back to the drawings further back in the drawings. Have we incorporated any of this? Have we put cut sections where we thought we were missing some cut sections? Has that all been done yet?
Any of the RFI stuff that went out with the bid package has all been incorporated into our drawings.
Mm-hmm.
We are including all the sketches and all the things that went out in addenda for the MEP drawings. There was some cleanup that has been done, but I can't say that everything.
Well, the reasoning that Tom gave, and I think you shared with Tom's comment was, we're trying to meet the bid date. We had COVID-19 and we understand all that, but it's been nearly 3 months and there were some items in there. And my big concern is this: the tighter the drawings, the less likelihood you're going to see opportunity for change orders. So if there's anything that we could clean up now, knowing what we're going forward with here, especially after our first 45 minutes of this conversation, of this meeting, we really should take another look at that list and see if you can incorporate that, because it wouldn't seem like it would be that complicated to add something you already have there, just turning on, I think you pointed out to me once, turning on certain revets or switches, however that works.
No.
So can that be looked at and addressed back to us here fairly quickly?
I can look at some of things and see what we can do to make kind of clarifications. Contractors don't generally like it when you change the drawings that they've got their contract based on.
We're not asking to change. We're asking for straight clarification. We're not asking for a change of any kind. If it's on the elevations and the interior elevations and all you did is help redirect them with little questions, that's not a change. That's a clarification.
Well, I'll take another pass through, look at that kind of stuff as I'm looking through.
Take a look. I think that the list that that Brian Addy compiled here, maybe just kind of read through that if you don't mind.
Or maybe you can resend it to them.
Could always issue ASIs as you're going through the process too. If you're trying to clarify something, I'm not really sure what areas you're specific about, Sal, but.
Well, I just picked up just the one item there. There was an it was the interior elevations and how you went about getting back to where's the second fireplace conversation, for example. And it was in the documents. It just wasn't clear at the time to us. But we're just asking for that to just be clarified is all. My opinion on the cut section on the structural drawings, but if they've got revets that can be flipped on and just clarify for that too without a change, nothing wrong with that.
Well, are we owed a conformance set of documents, which would include that?
Matt, you're saying yes?
I was unclear on.
I'm sorry, Marco?
I was a little unclear on whether we were contracted to do conformance set. And that was a question with Tom, and he was going to address it. So.
Yeah, I checked the contract. Yes, it's part of the basic services.
So if we just complete the rest of the conformance set, I guess, or whatever, and however we have to do with an ASI.
Yep.
And again, for the reasons I'm talking about, it's not to put anybody on the spot. It's to make sure that we clean this up and keep these changes to a minimum and be clear in what was spelled out and what we bought already. So there's no question about it as to this is what we expect.
Understood.
Everybody needs to honor to their contract. Everybody needs to. And live up to what we asked for.
Okay, anybody else have any comments or questions for QA&M? All right. Moving on, next item, correspondence, communications. John, is there anything for us? Anything in our packet?
No, I don't believe anything is in the packet. I don't remember getting anything.
I don't know if I caught something online or whatnot about a virtual groundbreaking ceremony, or is anything planned for that?
The thoughts are more along the lines later on, do a final beam signing. Be later on in the project, and hopefully more people can be able to come out and attend and go that route.
Okay.
Just to add a little bit of more information to that, we've already prompted that to PAC to start to identify what beam would be appropriate, when they should have that on, when they would plan to lift that, and therefore when they'll have it on site so that people can stop by at their leisure to be able to sign it, so that not everybody has to show up all at once. And then they'll be identifying when the lifting would actually happen, so that we could, in fact, be there in person.
Okay. Any other correspondence from anybody? Communications?
I just have a question on the senior project, if we're still on it. I know we talked a while back
It's
about.
the only project we have.
Yeah. I don't know if we're moving on to the bills and stuff, but I wanted to catch it on. I know a while back we talked about COVID-19 and all that, and has the town done anything, or has any language been put into the contract as far as like a COVID plan from the contractor? Is he liable for all those extra costs? Are we going to get hammered for delays based on that if something happens? Have we pursued that? Or is that something that needs to be put in the contract? Was anything put in the bid documents in conjunction with that?
It has been reviewed by the town's attorney. There is basically the clause being utilized at the moment is generally is force majeure. You can't really put anything in the contract at the moment, blanketing that they don't have any ability because it's unknown what the impacts are, but anything that they are aware of at the moment or at the time of the bid is obviously something that's already occurred and where they wouldn't be able to come back for anything that happened in the past. It's also a topic at every OAC meeting on each agenda to make sure that it's
right. And they'll probably need to submit some type of COVID plan so that they know that their subs and everyone are following it. You know, the basics, the distancing, the masks.
From a safety standpoint, yes.
I just want to prevent any delays if we can. It's just going to take one person and then we may be shut down for 2 weeks, you know?
Okay. You broke up on me a little bit there. I don't know if anybody caught that. I believe cost for PPE and as an added cost to the town. But as far as any delays due to contamination or supply chain issues, again, that's something that we'll we'll have to look at when the time comes. Anybody have anything else on that issue?
Yeah, because we've already run into issues with the supply chain, and HVAC units are now 20+ weeks. So I mean that's kind of the stuff we need to be aware of now, especially when we go through the submittal process and long lead times up front. I think a lot of the manufacturers have been putting out letters and stuff to notify, and obviously I would expect the subcontractor to let us know if there's something that's a long lead time or urgent that we can expect, so that those things can become priority in the whole submittal schedule.
Okay. If anybody doesn't have anything else, move on to item 6, bill payment recommendations. There are 2 invoices in your packet. Somebody like to go ahead and make motions on those? You guys hear me?
I got you.
All right, I know I'm having internet connection problems.
Yeah,
so.
Sal, you want to announce the bills?
Sure. Bear with me. Make a motion for Quisenberry Arcari Malik LLC invoice number 12653 dated 4/30/2020 in the amount of $12,200. I'm sorry, $12,231.63.
I have a motion made. Do I have a second?
Seconded.
Second by Tom. Any discussion? Any discussion?
Yes, I do.
Good. Yep.
Back to Rocco. It looks like you're billing out at, you have to excuse, I keep having to switch back to screens here. You're billing out at, I guess, 100% for the bidding services. Construction documents are already billed out previously, and we're just simply on the FF&E and construction admin, but we just talked about conformance set of drawings. So what category or what line item would that fall on? That
Well, as I was unclear earlier about where it was in the contract, we were tracking that time, so.
Sal, usually that's in CA.
I'm sorry?
Usually
In
that's
CA.
in CA.
Okay. All right. All right, because if we can take a look, we're going to need to look at that closer by next month as we go through this monthly billing. Because obviously we want those done as quick as possible. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Any discussion? All right. Hearing none, I'll do a roll call vote. Can I call your name? Yay or nay? Mr. Gansey?
Yay.
Mr. Bodwin?
Yay.
Mr. Marchand?
Yay.
Mr. Bates?
Yay.
Mr. Longo?
Yay.
And Mr. O'Connor?
Yay.
Okay, motion is approved. On to the next one.
I'd like to make a motion to approve Collier's invoice number 006169 dated dated April 30th in the amount of $9,275.
I have a motion made. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Tom. Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Hearing none. Do a roll call vote here. Mr. Gansey?
Yay.
Mr. Bodwin?
Yay.
Mr. Marchand?
Yay.
Mr. Bates?
Yay.
Mr. Longo?
Yay.
And Mr. O'Connor?
Yay.
Okay, motion is approved. And with that, I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Thank you very much,
Aye.
everyone, for your time. We are adjourned at 6:47. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Have a nice night, guys.
Good night, all.
You too.
Yeah.
Barn door, Steve.